Hey, what up, everybody? Um, I'm coming at y'all again with some Shannon Sharpe stuff. And first and foremost, um, shout out to Chess Sharpe and to Law and Crime for the material I'm going to be using today. Um, I'm going to go ahead and do this and get on out y'all's way. Let's go. Uh, Hold on. Here we go. Here we go.
They talk to us. How this date thing? Because it's Mo is different now. When you and I,
it's different, baby. I'm grateful I'm not 56 and trying.
When you tried to say that, what you tried to say?
I'm looking right at you, and I'm grateful.
Now, normally I wouldn't agree with Monique, but I agree with Monique here that that he should have found a woman who's a little bit older. But then again, it's Shannon's choice uh, whether or not if you want a woman who's older or not.
Now, you better take your old ass and get somebody to love you.
Damn, Mo.
Now I'm looking right at you and I tell you what Shannon needs. Okay? Let me tell you what my baby needs. He need him an old fat gal who can bake good cakes, make some smothered turkey wings, who gonna rub his feet at the nighttime. Okay?
And then the white girl, who who's basically shaking him down. It's a basic in the face white girl with a BBL. And that's all she is.
And gonna have a sip of his cognac to make him feel better about himself when he come home at night. That's what Shannon needs. You don't need no 26-year-old girl. You don't need no 36-year-old girl. This is your auntie talking to you. Take your old ass and get your old out there that can love your own. You trying to hang out with these young you can't do it, Shannon. You just can't do it. These young gals will bite you. Okay?
To my family, friends, supporters, and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown. I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. This is all being orchestrated by Tony Busby, who was targeting Jay-Z. Tony Busby.
Now, Tony Busby, again, Tony Busby ain't nothing more than Gloria Allred if she was born a man. Excuse me. Let me repeat it again. Tony Busby is Gloria Allred if Gloria Allred was born a man.
Targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a verdict.
Which means Tony Busby is a clout chaser and an attention whore.
Sent a clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and played into every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I'll do it myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The encounter in question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup, coordinated by Gabby, also known as Carly on OnlyFans. Gabby and Tony Busby want $50 million. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about. And I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys. Thanks.
Y'all, God has been warning men against prostitutes since day one. But dudes still getting caught up. Listen, God ain't lying. He knows what he's saying. He knows these ladies will literally destroy your life.
Yep.
All it takes is the wrong woman. All it
Yep.
takes is the wrong connection. And a man's wealth can be taken away. His reputation can be destroyed at the drop of a dime. So when he's out here saying, don't sleep with these hoes, don't mess with prostitutes, don't get together with adulterous woman. He's not trying to keep y'all from having fun. He's trying to save y'all. But folks don't want to listen. And here's the thing I found about being with the wrong kind of woman, or the wrong kind of woman for a particular man. They can bring out the worst of that man. They can bring out the worst. They can bring him to the edge. They can put him in scenarios or put emotional strain on him that will have him acting out of character. See, that's the whole thing about this insane situation. Now we're at a he said, she said, and we don't really know the truth yet. What we do know is that there's never a situation in which a man should be sleeping around with a prostitute. And honestly, I don't think there's a situation in which a woman should be prostituting herself either. And the byproduct, or the possible byproduct of that toxic dynamic, is the whole situation we got going on right now.
Well, you're coming to LA tomorrow?
Yes.
Well, I don't know why you want to go out.
Don't worry about it, Daddy.
And why does this chick sound high? The chick in question sounds high as a kite.
Well, okay.
Okay, what?
Well, I'm not really interested in getting choked, so I guess we're going.
Yeah. I choke you in public. Big black guy chokes small white woman.
It's not a good look.
This recording does not help him, but also does not help her. Let's continue.
Shannon,
Not a good look that you did with the shit you did to me.
okay, well,
This is obviously a mess. I mean, there's no way around it. It is a total mess. But there are some important lessons we can glean from the situation. By now, you are probably familiar with the rape accusations that have been levied against Shannon Sharpe, just days after talks of him landing a $100 million contract. The alleged victim, who since has been revealed as Gabriella Zuminga, is an OnlyFans model and says that Shannon Sharpe essayed her and did things to her without her consent. Since then, Shannon Sharpe has released explicit text messages between them both, revealing the sexual and consensual nature of their relationship. Since she is an OnlyFans model, he alleges that she does fantasy work and other kinds of sexual acts for money, and that this is all a shakedown. So now we are back in a classic battle of he said, she said.
Yep,
But you know
unfortunately.
that $10 million settlement, which is quite revealing and leaves a lot of room for a question, and may point to the fact that there is some guilt on his part, or some truth to her allegations. But also could be that she simply has something on him that is very embarrassing and that he'd rather hide, or that he simply wanted to pay her off quietly to not interfere with the $100 million contract he was about to sign. Either way, there's a lot of the story that is yet to be revealed. But whatever it may be, this is yet another example of a black man's reputation being destroyed and torn down all over a sexual encounter with a woman. And for the young 20-year-old woman who's involved, if she was actually sexually assaulted, that is horrible, and that should not be allowed. And if what she alleges about Shannon Sharpe's character is indeed true, not only is that problematic, that's likely to cost his career, and honestly, it was only a matter of time that this kind of behavior would catch up to him. But then again, who knows? This could also be a shakedown. Nobody really knows. But also the reality is, less people have empathy for a woman who chooses to sell her body for money. it can come across as less convincing and genuine when a woman chooses to sell sex for a living and has issues associated with that. When a woman does sex work, or even if it's digital sex work, and is allegedly open to doing role play and other fantasy work, it's really a blurry line between consensual and dangerous. It's just such a blurry line. But here's the bigger picture. You have men right now going out of their way to say, listen, don't mess with snow bunnies and Tazuma Johnson. And yes, we do know that this situation is a classic storybook example of how black men in the past have been ruined, while some great accusations have been going on pretty much since the beginning of American history. But let's be honest, there are also black women who can still be detrimental to black men. So I'm not just going to say it's about ignoring white women and then black women are going to be okay. No, it's deeper than that. Ultimately, a man with resources, especially, has a lot of risk sleeping with prostitutes and IG models. I mean, I know that kind of lifestyle can be glamorized, and at times even presented as having less risk than actually marrying. And literally, God has been warning men all the way back to biblical times that there is a lot of issues associated with dealing with prostitutes. Like, it's not a good look. The thing is, dudes be forgetting that they are not always sleeping with women. Some of these dudes are out here literally sleeping with whole demons. Hyenas, women with evil spirits, females with evil spirits, however y'all want to put it. But literal demons. I mean, there are actually ladies out here who will use prostitution to engage in witchcraft. Like, they'll actually do spiritual practices behind closed doors before they get with the clients or after they get with their clients to do all kinds of dark magic. They'll use love potions. Some of these ladies will spike the man's food or drink and try to do different seances and stuff. And
Blood
they'll take
magic.
the semen and offer it up to their deities. Like they do weird stuff. Like, it's real out there. So, like I said, it's not like these men are just sleeping with IG models and they're reading and there's no imprint. Some of these ladies are whole demons, okay? Or they're worshiping them. So, like, I mean, that's the problem, y'all. There are some crazy ladies out there. And while I'm not saying this is necessarily the case for his accuser, we just don't know. These kinds of situations do speak to the vulnerability that men are in when they go sleeping around and when they're basically doing what God says that you shouldn't be doing since, like, thousands of years at this point. All it takes is one woman to ruin your life. Now, how do you find a good woman? Well, I mean, a prudent wife is actually a gift from God, honestly. Like, you can't pull them out of the sky. A man has to be directed to his woman. A man has to be directed to his wife from the Most High. Like, it is truly a blessing from God. But I do believe a man who is serious about positioning himself to find a woman is a lot more likely to meet her, or at least recognize her when she comes, than a man who is just simply engaging with IG models, dealing with prostitute energy, and, like, not really looking for something serious. At that point, you're not even in the ballpark to attract a wife or a woman of that caliber. And if you spend all your time dealing with prostitutes, you just can't be surprised when you run into some demons. But anyways, y'all, that's what I got. What y'all think about this whole situation? Hopefully the truth comes out. It's just a mess. And it's better to just avoid this situation entirely versus try to figure out he said, she said.
Back on the money. Back on the money.
Oh, hey, I'm over here talking and to myself. So let me do that again. First of all, shout out to you, Gia Hamilton with the 2 on the super chat. Starting off the chat right. I appreciate you guys. Also, happy Wednesday evening. Another last minute live. I'm trying to go more live regularly when I can, when time permits. By now, you guys are familiar with this whole Shannon Sharpe situation. It's a mess. It is a mess. I mean, I mentioned this earlier in my community tab. I just posted this like maybe an hour ago, where I noticed every single year it seems like there is a public assassination of a black man, whether it be literally, he is actually publicly assassinated, then it becomes public discourse, whether it be through, police brutality or some other means, or also a character assassination. It's very regular. Even we had, what was it? Maybe not too long ago. That's kind of been a little bit quiet. You had Jonathan Majors. You had, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly. I mean, I'm drawing blanks. I'm sure you guys also can give me some examples. But annually, there are rituals, and I feel like I said, it shifts between character assassination or actual literal deletion. And I just feel like that's just a trend that I'm noticing. I'm like, I don't know if this is a ritual, but I kind of feel like it is. But nevertheless, Shannon Sharpe, he's next. And, this whole situation started with this she's young 20-something-year-old IG model / previous girlfriend or previous situationship alleges that he basically SA'd her. And this happened literally just a few days after he was about to sign a $100 million deal. So of course there's a lot a lot of speculation here. This obviously looks like a shakedown. If you consider that it comes out like he's about to sign a $100 million deal, and then literally all of a sudden this girl comes out of nowhere talking about she's being SA'd. Yes, some may look at this and be like, this is a shakedown. Others may say, oh no, she was manipulated, etc., etc., etc. So that's been the public discourse pretty much up to this point. But what I wanted to do too, I started off by giving you guys a quick recap of what's gone on. Obviously, allegations are going out. Now they're pretty much going back and forth. She's releasing audio, he's releasing audio, and it's this back and forth discourse, us trying to figure out what is actually right. There's a few other things that I want to review with you guys that I think we really want to consider when you are looking not only overall at the situation, but I think what this situation points to. And men already know today that there is a lot of issues associated with dealing with 304s, dealing with, quote, modern women, basically dealing with any woman who was a byproduct of the toxic modern culture. That's been public discourse. But I think what we're seeing in this particular situation is that it's just not a level of annoyance. It's that you have ladies out here who are legitimately going out of the way to tear a man down. So it goes beyond, oh, she has a bad attitude. It goes beyond, okay, she has high expectations. It goes beyond that. It goes now to the point where it's like, no, getting with the wrong woman can not only destroy your emotional life, it can actually destroy the entirety of your life. And that's what I want to get into today, because it's a lot deeper than just, okay, modern woman, and they're just being pre-programmed to be helps. There is something to that. But I think it's gotten to the point where it's a lot more dark and sinister. And we're seeing this based upon not only the way these ladies are acting, but based upon the results that it's producing. You said she ain't no lady. Right. So, okay. So a couple of things I want to bring up. Again, you guys, if you were hopping in here, like, share, subscribe. I'll try not to take this too long, but there were just a few of the things that I wanted to touch upon that I was not able to address in the actual video. Okay, so there is this article that I wanted to look at specifically that is basically alleging that Shannon Sharpe could actually be guilty. So, right now, as I mentioned before, we are in a battle of he said, she said. The whole point is, okay, is Shannon Sharpe credible, or is this 20-year-old or 20-something-year-old OnlyFans model credible? Now, here's something else that I think we have to really take into consideration. We have the entire society that is up in arms over a prostitute, alleging that she was sexually misused. Again, the context here is that we have someone who is professionally engaged in sex work.
Talk about it.
Alleging that she was mishandled while doing sex work. This is the context. Now, I saw a comment in here earlier that was interesting where it says, you guys only do this kind of stuff in America, in the United States. In any other country, if a prostitute was to stand up and say, I was, sexually abused, they would laugh her out of the room and keep going. Their idea is, duh, like, you get paid. You literally signed up to be in an industry. You signed up to be in an industry where you are selling your body. Like, you are purposely getting yourself in an industry that is unsafe, where you get paid to do things that some may consider sexually grotesque, abusive, whatever. Like, that's your line of work. That's like a cook crying about having to touch food. Like, who does it? That's like a firefighter crying about getting burned. That. So, I want everybody to remember that the context, we literally have a media, not only in America, but across the entire Western Hemisphere, from what I'm seeing stuff come from BBC, UK, all of that. Getting up in arms about truly a sex worker complaining about having issues in sex work. This is the context. This is the context. This is the context. So when we want to talk about shakedown, and when we want to talk about how, in my opinion, there is an aspect of me that wants to believe she's true, because I hate the idea of a woman going out of her way to falsely accuse a man. I think that idea to me is so deplorable, and so part of me wants to believe that she's telling the truth. But there's so many aspects of the story that literally just make no sense, and to me that don't line up. And like I said, we want to remember the context. The context, we're not talking about a girl, just, a girl that he met maybe in a restaurant, or, a woman who maybe she graduated high school and then she started getting to college and was studying and they met, you know what I mean? That is not the context. We are talking about, let me see if I can actually pull up her photo. Because my understanding, she's still out there, y'all. She's still out there. We're talking about a woman who does sex work, like, on purpose. Purposefully.
Yep.
When I saw her, last time I saw her, I think yesterday, she was still public. Now, I don't know if she has since made her, account private. I'm not sure. But when I saw her last, it was like yesterday, she was out there. Let me see. I'm trying to see if I can find her. Because I'm like, y'all bear with me. I should have had this before. Is that it? There's a lot of Gabriella Zaningas, evidently. But I think there are not as many who are actually OnlyFans models. But either way, if you're able to actually locate and find her account, what you will find is that she's out there. She's out there in bikinis. She's out there posting seductive photos. She has an OnlyFans page. She has a page. She has a business that is based upon doing sex work. That is the context. So a woman who was going out doing sex work is accusing a man of sexually misusing her. That is the context. Now, and like I said, now it is a matter of her word versus his word. Her word versus his word.
Unfortunately.
Her word versus his word. In certain societies, a prostitute wouldn't even be in a conversation, or a woman wouldn't even have the time of day. But in America,
only in America,
there's that leverage, especially if. Oh, here she is. Okay, I think this is her. Is that her? Oh wait, no, that's not. Sorry, guys. I'm like, because I wanted to show you guys. She has a pretty big. I should have brought this up before. Let me see. Anyways, that's besides the point. You guys can find her. My point is, in many other societies, this wouldn't even be an issue. You're not going to have a situation in which a prostitute can go and pretty much take down someone who actually has been well respected in the industry for decades, and claim not only that he assaulted her,
only in America,
assaulted her in the industry that she does professionally. This is a person who, at least allegedly, in her business, does role play, does all kinds of explicit things. as a way to make money. This is what she does. So the fact that we're even having this conversation to me already is like, okay, y'all, this is insane. This is insane. Another thing to consider about this case that doesn't really line up. I unfortunately know women who have been essayed. I know women who have had sexual, who have been, misused in that way. And from at least what I've gathered is anyone who has gone through that traumatizing experience is not necessarily going out of their way to put themselves or paint themselves in a sexually explicit light. They're not going to do that. They're not going to have a public platform where someone can find them and see them, and they're posted in their bikinis, and they're posted in their that's not going to be there. They might hide themselves. They actually might hide themselves. They might actually draw away from men. They might get out of the dating zone. Like they might start, we can say, the behaviors that speak to trauma, that speak to there being a lot of trauma associated with men and associated with sexual acts. So the very fact that you have, this the woman that claims to be SA, which again, there's still a lot of speculation around that. The behavior to me is not reflective of a woman who actually generally, to my understanding, shows abuse. You said what happened? Yeah, I shut down the stream earlier because my internet went out. A struggle stream. Sorry. You were on there earlier and it got cut off. There was a struggle stream, so sorry about that. That's what was going on. I didn't mean to do it, but the internet decided they just wanted it to chill. We're just doing a quick recap. But what I wanted to talk about, which is a few things about this case that seem a little bit strange to me, right? How, first of all, the fact that you have literally society taking seriously the word of prostitute. That speaks to the values of this the country, because in other countries, a prostitute doesn't have really any validity. A prostitute is something that a man deals with behind closed doors that nobody takes seriously, and they're not treated as like an equal. So I'm like, but in America, in the West, it's different. So I just wanted to paint that parallel. Secondly, now we're looking at some of the different things, right? So she's alleging that he essayed her. But what I found to be interesting is, and let me show you this. Just to give you guys. I actually don't think this is her account, because she actually did have an account. She had an account that was a lot. Let me see. That's what I was like. I literally saw it yesterday, and then now I'm wondering if she privatized it, because it was literally up yesterday, and it had, I think, almost more than 500,000 followers. And now it's harder to come by. So she may have actually shut it down. After maybe getting people in there who were saying stuff. But what you're gonna see about Miss Gabby is that she's not playing patty cake. Her photos were not they weren't photos that were like, okay, I'm going to college.
Okay, just say she was half naked.
I'm doing Pilates, you know what I mean? Like these weren't images that were completely
and this is the IG that she's showing.
Sultry and seductive.
On the IG, the chick is basically half naked. On the OF, she's basically spread eagle butt naked.
I don't think this is her actual page, because this was another girl named Gabriela Zaninga who people were mistaking for her. So this is not her actual page. The page that I saw, to my understanding, actually had 500,000 followers. That was literally yesterday. But anyways, my point is, these images look like someone who's trying to be chased. No, obviously not. OnlyFans. So again, we are. Internet is literally losing their mind over an OnlyFans model claiming that she was misused while doing the work that she is paid to do. Here's another thing about this case that doesn't seem logical. Generally, when a woman is misused, there is a medical examination. I see this here. There's a medical examination. There's a police report. There's a process that a woman goes through. Again, unfortunately, I know this because I have the unfortunate experience of knowing women who have gone through this, and it can be very traumatizing. So they have to go and do a grade kit. There can be a police report. Sometimes they choose not to if they don't want to go through that process. It's more of an emotional thing. So I can understand perhaps not having a police report maybe at that particular time, but certainly there's generally going to be a medical examination to confirm and affirm. To my understanding, there's none of that. Now, if there is, you guys let me know, because I don't want to speak ill, or I don't want to misrepresent facts. But to my understanding, there's no medical report, there's no police report, there's nothing to actually show that this person was assaulted. Also, let's remember that the claim is that she was misused, but they continued to still date. It wasn't like he did something wrong and then she stopped it. She was traumatized. She went to the police. She had the medical examination. She filed the police report. No. Allegedly, these things were done, but then they still continued to date. And then things broke up. And then all of a sudden, he's about to land this $100 million deal, and it's like, oh, now, okay, yeah, now. So here's the thing about it, right? The problem with ladies who get involved in this kind of work, this game, the 3 or 4, the whole phase, which is why I don't like it, which is why I don't like OnlyFans, which is why I don't like prostitution, which is why I don't like sex work, is because this line of work is intimately connected with manipulation. It is intimately connected. It is almost impossible to be in this line of sex work, or to be in that line of work, and not go out of your way to manipulate men. It's connected. There is no way in which a woman is actively engaging in basically sex work. Right, basically losing her body to allure men in. And she's not manipulating. She's not engaging in what they call a Jezebel spirit. She's not using her femininity to get what she wants, to attract what she wants from that man. And I understand this dynamic is also challenging because this girl, she's young 20s. This man is, 56? Now, I think maybe when they were dating, maybe he was 54, 53. But there's a significant age gap, right? And so obviously he has a ton of years over her. But what I'm saying is, based upon the evidence, neither party is completely innocent. You're a sex worker. That goes without saying. Shannon Sharpe has already released text messages between the two that were very explicit, where she herself said some very, very, very explicit things. None of those things spoke to a woman who was misused, a woman who was being abused, a woman who was anything but, an OnlyFans model. With me, I'm gonna show real briefly some of the messages that were shared, right? So he shared some of these messages, and she's talking about putting on a dog collar, talking about, 25K for a cheek, like really explicit things. Really, 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 really explicit things. And here's, again, my point. When you play with fire, you can't be surprised if you get burned.
Yeah.
When you play with fire, you cannot be surprised if you get burned. A woman who was engaged in sex work, a woman who was engaged in, and not only this, but this kind of aggressive fantasy role play. It's a super blurry line between that and then SA. It's a super blurry line. And without there being a medical examination, without there being a police report, without there being a clear understanding that she, stopped the relationship once the assault happened, without any of those things, it literally just sounds like a shakedown. It sounds like a total and complete shakedown. And I hate to jump to conclusions without having all of the evidence, right? And so I can't sit here and say fully, oh, this woman is alive, because we just don't fully know. There's still things that are yet to be revealed. But based upon the current evidence, this seemed like, yeah, she's just trying to get some money. That's what it seemed like. She's just trying to get some money from the evidence that has been presented up to this point. Now, as far as Shannon Sharpe is concerned, as I mentioned before, there's really some dudes out there who feel like, okay, not getting married or not being in a committed relationship with a good woman and hopping around with all these hoes that it's actually a safer and less of a burden to sleep around with all these hoes, sleep around with all these prostitutes, and sleep around with IQ models. Like that's a better, safer deal. And I think that is silly. It is silly. It is to me bananas. And particularly if you are a man of means, if you are a man that has attention, if you're a man that has money, notoriety, a reputation, the last thing you need to be doing is just sleeping with a random thing you meet on IG.
Talk
That's the
about it.
last thing you need to do, because you are one of the easiest targets.
Too easy of a
And there have been
target.
too many men that have lost the entirety of their life, or have lost their reputation, or have completely just broken it in half over a few minutes of fun.
Yeah.
A few minutes of fun. It's like
Facts.
selling away your birthright for a bowl of soup. If y'all that who are familiar with that story in the Bible,
Yep.
this person sold away their birthright just because they got hungry. You know what I mean? It's like, why would you take something that you've built your entire life? You've spent decades building your life and your reputation and gaining momentum in the media and all that kind of different stuff. And then you take your most intimate moments and join it with a prostitute, join it with a woman that you meet online, who sells her body to other people, who posts her goods to any man or woman, quite frankly, who is willing to buy it. That don't make no sense to me. But there's people out there who really feel like that's a better deal. And it's actually not. Because that's what's getting men caught up every single day. And that's what's happening here. IG girls are active traps for celebrity. Yes, in sports. So here's also what I want to mention. So I mentioned this in the previous video that I played, or that I posted earlier, where it was like, listen, some of these ladies out here are actually, they're not just girls who are just trying to follow mainstream culture. No, some of them are actually involved in like dark magic. Like they literally use their sex work as a form of dark magic to their witch doctor, to their deity. Like they do weird things with it. And so you have some dudes who think, oh, okay, they're just gonna have a fling and then leave. And it's like, no, you don't understand that woman has gone out of her way to actually try to trap you. She's done things. She may have taken your semen. She may have given you, like, spiked your food. Like, there are legitimately some women who do weird things like this to try to trap you. Literally to try to trap you. And oftentimes what will happen is they won't wait. They won't wait till the man seems like he's at the pinnacle of his career. They won't do it. They won't do it right when he's still building. No. They'll wait until the time where they are the most likely to get the most bang for their buck, and then they'll strike. We've seen it all the time. And this, I think, is what's going on, based upon the evidence. Now, listen, I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I will stand up and say it. If there is ample evidence that comes out and shows that no, he actually was, abusing and mistreating her, and it was some scenario in which she felt violated, and he put okay, but I'm like, just to me, the evidence doesn't speak to that by nature of the fact that we have evidence to show that he was basically tricking on her, like literally, like he was paying for her. We know that she is an OnlyFans person who, yesterday when I checked, she had over a 500,000 followers of her just basically posting really, really, really skimpy clothes, her working out, her in a bikini, her in seductive poses, and then you click her link in her Instagram and it goes for OnlyFans, so like we know what time it is for her. And so like, yeah, based upon that evidence, it's like, yeah, dude just seems like he was following his lower nature. He just wanted to have a little bit of fun. He was being careless and got caught up and forgot that this ain't just a game. For some ladies, it's a whole retirement plan. They are out here to literally trap you. So real quick, I want to show you guys real quickly. There's this video I ran across of a channel I really like. Now this was actually, and let me actually pull this up right now. Let me pull this up really quickly, and then we can. Oh, let me do this. Oops, sorry about that. What I'm going to show you real quick to kind of actually give you guys an example of what I was saying. Oh, where did this go? Dang it, it shut down. Sorry. Okay, and I'm all over the place now that my I'm over the place now that my live shut down and my thing shut down, and just all the things that I had up ready to go are like now. Okay, so going back to what I said earlier about some of these ladies really be out here using this stuff as witchcraft, and they are trying to trap these dudes, and they go and take extra measures to try to trap the man even after they have had sex with him. I want to show you an example of a lady who admits to this. Now, this is coming from a channel that I like to watch called Life is Spiritual. They're actually based in, I think, Uganda, I want to say, although I think one of the producers there is from America. He's from America, then I think he met his wife and moved to Kenya and all that stuff. But in this particular video, this is a lady. She was a prostitute. She's not a prostitute anymore, but she was a lady who engaged in prostitution back when she was younger. Before she decided to give her life over to God and try to do things, differently, whatever. But she was engaged in that, and she goes on to talk about the different things that she did to actually snatch wealthy men. And she said that she actually specifically targeted wealthy men, and she generally targeted married wealthy men because she saw that they could give her the most bang for her buck. And so, that's this interview, I think, its entirety is about 2 hours, but there's a few minutes where she actually breaks down some of the different things that she did to not only attract wealthy men, but to try to secure them as long as she wanted so that they would give her the money. So I'm just going to play this example real quick, and then we can wrap this thing up.
That's how, and then the business was good. I used to have someone, and then for some time I would drop them, because for me, I didn't want it to be permanent. And then the more you're advancing, the more you have a relationship with this doctor, the more he's advancing those drugs on you. So at some moment, I had a big fish.
You had
A big fish is a rich, loaded guy. Yeah, big fish. I mean, a big fish. Jesus said, I will make you fishers of men. Fishing them into the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yes.
But now,
Let me say this real quick. I hear it's not fair for men in church who were not players that end up with a prostitute who was for. I'm not one into trying to force a man to. I don't believe you're supposed to try to force a man to go clean up another woman's mess. No, I've absolutely no way. Absolutely no way. I think people meet on their level. Now, if a man feels called to do that for some reason, okay. But I wouldn't force that on a man, because there's also in the church you will find women who are to this day I know virgins in the church who are like for real virgins, not out here lying, but like who are legitimately virgins, like since day one, and they are, waiting to meet their husband. They do exist. Now, what I find is that women like that tend to stick together with other women, and they tend to be hidden. They are not out here on Instagram like that. They're not out here on social media like that. They tend to live very private, quiet lives. But they exist. So you'll find both in the church. But I am not one that says, oh, you need to be a good holy man or be a good honest, righteous man, and then sit up here and marry Brittany Renner and try to change her around. No. Absolutely no. People meet on their level with where they're at.
the world is also fishing. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And there's a scripture that says that the agents will hunt for the precious life. They hunt.
Yes.
They hunt.
He has a bright destiny. He has.
They check him to see how he's doing. If he's got money, if he's a boss.
Yeah. Tell us the big fish. How
So
did
you
you
had a
find
big
this
fish.
big fish?
How big of a fish was he?
It was big.
The big fishes are watching.
We met in a club. A person would see me, and then he would come to me. And then you can sense how he is with the kind of alcohol he's taking.
The labels.
Yeah. The car,
His SUV, Mercedes, Hammer.
how he's talking, how he's treating you. There's a way they talk, and there's a way they treat someone. So I called my prophet, and then I told him, I found this guy. And then he told me, come, let me advance some drugs. I was given some drugs, to put two kind of them, and one was to put on myself. And I know many have gone through this, and this is the part that people hate me when I talk about this. But a lot of men have gone through this part. You take a liver, the meat, liver meat.
The liver.
Yeah.
Of an animal.
Yes.
Like cow?
Like a cow.
Yeah, but it's a liver. And then you put a small portion of it in your private parts, just to sleep there.
Okay, so we can speak on the mind. People don't need to miss this point.
Yeah.
You said you get a liver?
Yeah, and then a portion of it, you put it on your private part. And then in the morning, you shave your armpits and your private part. No, this is the lady doing this. And then when you do that, you're supposed to take that hair, you put it in a hot pan. When you put hair in a hot pan, it melts. Yes, not melting, it becomes like
Like flour. Okay.
Yes. So you put that one maini, the liver which was inside, you put it in that hair, and then you use the drugs that you're given there, and then you feed a man. No, you're going to cook the other maini, the other livers, but on his plate you're going to
And you feed him with that.
you make sure he has eaten.
Honey, let me feed you. Oh my God.
Yes.
Men who like to sleep around or
Okay, so I mean, I know that's a little extreme. I mean, that's a whole, like I said, whole interview. Very, very interesting interview. If y'all want to check it out, it's a whole 2 hour and 15 minutes. She basically goes on to talk about her whole journey, how she got into prostitution, which is again very common for women who fall in hard times financially. They don't have any support, et cetera, and then basically how she got caught in the game and she wanted to get to where she was making enough money and at any means possible, and she saw prostitutes out there who were making the most money and found that some of them were engaging in these basically dark magic to attract men, and that's what she started doing, so to hold downward spiral. So listen, I'm not saying that this is the case necessarily for Mr. Shannon Sharpe and the alleged, Jane Doe, who I think since has been revealed as Gabriela Zaninga. I'm not saying that she's out here putting liver in private parts. I'm not saying that. We don't know. But what I am saying is that any time a man...
I'm gonna go to law and crime now. Let's get into it.
I'm sincerely hopeful and prayerful that he is completely innocent of the allegations that have been levied against him. I can't sit here and speak to his innocence or guilt.
High-profile names are speaking out as NFL Hall of Famer and first-take analyst Shannon
shout to
Sharpe
law and
steps
crime.
away from ESPN temporarily in the wake of a $50 million rape and sexual assault lawsuit. Sharpe, who adamantly denies the allegations, called them false and disruptive in a social media statement released just as disturbing audio clips began making the rounds online. I'm going to break down what this move signals for his legal battle ahead and what celebrities are saying as the story continues to unfold. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Shannon Sharpe, the Hall of Fame tight end, ESPN's first take analyst, announced he is stepping away from the network temporarily after a Nevada woman filed a $50 million lawsuit accusing him of rape and sexual assault. Sharpe announced his decision to step away in a social media statement where he called the allegations false and disruptive, insisted that their relationship was, quote, 100% consensual. ESPN backed this decision up to take a break, calling the situation, quote, serious. Now, Sharpe's statement that was posted on his Instagram account on April 24th reads in full, quote, my statement is found here and this is the truth. The relationship in question was 100% consensual. At this juncture, I am electing to step aside temporarily from my my ESPN duties, I will be devoting this time to my family and responding and dealing with false and disruptive allegations against me. I plan to return to ESPN at the start of the NFL preseason. I sincerely appreciate the overwhelming and ongoing support I have received from my family, friends, and colleagues. And following Sharpe's departure, as I mentioned, ESPN released its own statement supporting that decision. A spokesperson for the sports conglomerate wrote, "This is a serious situation, and we agree with Shannon's decision to step away." Now, this move comes on the very same day that the NFL draft kicked off and in the midst of the highly anticipated return of the 2025 preseason. But the controversy has already cast a shadow over his career and, by the way, a rumored, reported $100 million podcast deal, which we're going to talk about as well. Amidst all these claims, there have been some high-profile names who have come out to express their thoughts on the allegations, and we're going to get into what was said and who said what, because some of these responses may even surprise you. But in case you haven't been following this, you need a little refresher here. This is an incredibly tumultuous legal battle that Sharpe is now wrapped up in. You have this woman, who we're choosing not to name, by the way, even though it appears Shannon Sharpe and his legal team identified who she was. But you have this woman who has brought forth a lawsuit against the analyst alleging that she was in a relationship with him that began consensually back in 2023, but then turned very ugly. And that lawsuit that was filed on April 20th alleges that Sharpe raped this woman twice in October of 2024 and once in January of 2025. Key claims include, and I want you to brace yourself here because these are very disturbing allegations, that Sharpe raped her while she sobbed and ignored her pleas to stop, that he recorded her without her consent and shared videos with others, and that he even threatened her. There was an audio clip that was released by this woman's attorney, and if you've been watching a lot of Sidebar, you'll recognize the name, Tony Busby, capturing the voice of a woman whom attorneys...
Crap. I did not mean to do that.
The 1 month for free. I'm sincerely hopeful and pray.
Raped her while she sobbed.
Tony Busby, from what I've seen, has no credibility whatsoever.
Ignored her pleas to stop, that he recorded her without her consent and shared videos with others, and that he even threatened her. There was an audio clip that was released by this woman's attorney, and if you've been watching a lot of Sidebar, you'll recognize the name, Tony Busby, capturing the voice of a woman whom attorneys identify as the woman suing Shannon Sharpe, telling him not to manipulate her, where a man's voice, resembling Sharpe's, can be heard saying, "If you say that word one more time, I'm going to bleep and choke the bleep out of you when I see you." And the woman, allegedly the plaintiff in this case, then can be heard saying she doesn't want that, while the voice resembling Sharpe responds, "Yes, you do. I don't think you have a choice in the matter." And this is all important because Sharpe's team is not only denying the allegations, but they're firing back, calling this whole thing a shakedown, arguing that anything that did happen was entirely consensual. In fact, here's part of Sharpe's response that he posted to his Instagram page with a pretty serious promise to fight back in court.
This is a shakedown. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The county question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about, and I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys. Thanks.
And we know that this was coupled with Shannon Sharpe's team releasing text messages from this woman, or appearing to come from this woman. We did a Sidebar episode on that as well. But what has even been suggested is that Tony Busby was going to release a portion of a sex tape, and Shannon Sharpe encouraged, release the whole thing, release the full tape. Hey, just want to give a shout out to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law and Crime YouTube takeover. Now, Morgan & Morgan is a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they have so many? Because they win a lot. In the past few months, Morgan & Morgan secured a $9.3 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, a $5.6 million verdict for another car accident victim in Atlanta, and not to mention $1.8 million in Kentucky after insurance offered them a mere $5,000 in that case. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not start a claim and fight for what you deserve? You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. The whole process can be done from your phone. So if you're hurt, visit forthepeople.com/YouTube takeover. Click the link below or scan the QR code on screen. Now, before we go into this any further, I want to bring on a guest to talk about this. I'm joined by Jeremy Evans, a sports, entertainment, and media attorney. I mean, who's more perfect than Jeremy to talk about this? Jeremy, thanks so much for taking the time. Let's start off with his decision to step away from ESPN. From a law perspective, a media law perspective, him stepping away temporarily, is that a wise decision both for him and the network? And how could it be that he actually returns?
So, Jesse, pleasure to be with you, and thanks for having me on. Honored to be with you. I think a lot of these times you have to go back to what the contract says between the talent and the studio or the network. And, I don't know if there was a morals clause or some sort of brand reputation clause that they might be looking at or dealing with. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think in terms of him stepping away, I always like to compare these situations to how past actors have sort of done with this. Look at the Trevor Bauer situation, the allegations that came out against him, and I think the best thing to do for Shannon was to step away. I think this is a time for him and his team to reflect. I think it's unfortunate that it had to happen on NFL Draft Day. That happens to be one of the major subjects that he talks about on ESPN. So I definitely think he has the ability to come back, but I think one of the problems with stepping away voluntarily as opposed to being sort of forced out is that it does in some sense jeopardize the contract negotiations. I think it sort of puts a halt on a lot of things that he could be doing, but I think that also sort of highlights the seriousness of the allegations.
Do you think it also matters that this is a Disney-owned property when they own 80% of it? Do you think that matters?
I think so. I think, Disney is still recognized as a family brand. Even though I don't know if the average, sort of person would connect Disney with ESPN. I mean, business folks, of course. I don't think the average sort of child or maybe parent would recognize that. But that being said, it does matter. Disney is still sort of known as a family company, and this is one of their products. I think another thing to think about is, there was talk for quite some time about spinning off ESPN. And this might sort of engage those discussions again as well.
Well, here's the thing. Again, if he had consensual sex with her, kinky, whatever, it's not against the law. It's totally fine. But for someone to have a career as a public face of, a sports company like this, right? And you look at the audio tape that was released, or text messages, or whatever might else be released during the course of this, how could ESPN take him back? I mean, in the sense that, yes, he's a grown adult, to arguably consensual people. Let's just assume that for a moment, right? And nobody's saying that the audio tape, we're not 100% sure it's him, it seems like it's him. How would the company be able to take him back knowing all that stuff's out there?
Right. It's a great question, because you look at the Trevor Bauer situation that occurred, and even though he was proved, through different court iterations, through administrative hearings, to have had consensual sex and had not sort of done anything wrong, I think ultimately his actions on the field and sort of his combative nature, right or wrong, was sort of what did not allow him to come back to play baseball, right? And with Shannon Sharpe, I mean, this may be one of those things where if you were to watch his pod and some of the guests he has on, I think it's some of his best work in terms of him being sort of entertaining and funny. And it may just be that he sticks with the podcast. And the podcast would, by the way, pay him more than what he's getting with ESPN. So to your point, maybe it is that he doesn't come back to ESPN and he focuses on the podcast. And
Well, do you think the timing of this is interesting with the reported $100 million podcast deal?
I do, and there may be something to that as to sort of where the money's coming from. I would also say too that it's not surprising because anytime in litigation, you're always looking for the deep pockets. And I'm not a litigator, but that tends to be the case.
Interesting. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit more about the public figures who have begun weighing in on this. And the responses range from staunch defenses to what appears to be cautious skepticism, maybe. I think that's a fair way to articulate it. So I'm going to start with a big one, okay? This is Stephen A. Smith. This is Shannon Sharpe's First Take co-host. In a 20-minute video that was titled My Thoughts on the Shannon Sharpe Situation that was posted to his YouTube channel on April 22nd, Smith appeared, what I would say, conflicted on the allegations against someone that he referred to as a close friend, appearing to express discomfort with Sharpe's legal team releasing explicit text messages along with the accuser's name.
Going on the offensive to defend himself, I completely understand where Shannon Sharpe is coming from. On the other hand, when his legal team issued out the press release on X yesterday, and they spoke about, they mentioned her name, and they revealed some of those explicit text messages, that was uncomfortable.
And he even said he's not sure that's going to work. But in the end, he hoped for Shannon Sharpe's innocence.
It's a sad situation. Shannon Sharpe is somebody I work with a couple of days a week. Shannon Sharpe is somebody that I brought to ESPN. We've grown close as friends. I'm sincerely hopeful and prayerful that he is completely innocent of the allegations that have been levied against him. I can't sit here and speak to his innocence or guilt.
And it's also worth mentioning that Smith addressed Sharpe's frustration with attorney Tony Busby's history, his history of what they say arguably targeting high-profile cases against black men, namely the civil suit that was dropped against Jay-Z, but we also know that he's represented claims against Sean Combs, Deshaun Watson. So, Jeremy, back to you. When you listen to that, could Stephen A. Smith's arguable discomfort over Sharpe's legal team releasing explicit texts and naming the accuser, your thoughts on that tactic, and could that have legal implications for ESPN or Shannon Sharpe?
So it's such an interesting point in question. I guess two things. The first is I sort of look back at, if you may recall, the audio that was released by Shannon Sharpe, and it was sort of like a sex tape audio. And that occurred with, I would say, a year. I don't know how that was released or why that was released, but that was something that came out and was talked about. And so, again, that's an interesting little caveat in the background where people's minds are already thinking about this. And then these allegations come out. So that's not going to help him in that regard. I think with Stephen A. Smith's response, it's calculated. And I'm sort of reminded of this quote by Abraham Lincoln where he would say, stand with anyone that's right and stand with him when he's right and then part with him when he goes wrong. And I think that Stephen A. Smith has always been calculated. As his colleague and as his friend, I'm not sure I would have released that statement, or maybe I would have just done a written statement and maybe no comment or something like that. It does seem to sort of muddy the waters a little bit, to your point, because it adds more questions than answers. And again, the fact that they're colleagues at ESPN could provide for some issues as the litigation moves forward, and those are statements that potentially could be used.
He was clear he had no knowledge of any of this. He had no part in any of this, and he's just basing it off of the reporting. I guess it goes to a larger question of, and I mentioned this the other day, I call it the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni situation. It's basically the playbook. You release everything for the public. You release all these messages. You out your accuser. I don't know if the ethics of that, and I wonder if it could help him legally, maybe put pressure on it, this lawsuit to drop, or to make sure that he maintains public favorability. But obviously those messages could complicate a legal case for her, clearly, if we're talking about what happened. Just generally speaking, though, do you agree with his idea that
natural disaster, flood, fire, there's a sense of winning and having a fair fight. And unfortunately, there's no fair fights against wildfires in California.
This is Robert Bear. Agree with his idea that I don't know if I would have done that. Release everything, including naming her, which I thought was interesting too. Or seemingly naming her.
Yeah. No, good point, Jesse, because I think that anytime, one of the ethical responsibilities as a lawyer is that you have a duty to the tribunal, a duty to the court, and to have this ability to where you're very careful about how you speak outside of the courtroom and, how you prep for trial. All those things matter. So to your point, I don't know if it's the greatest strategy. This is such an interesting case because on one hand, to your point, it's not illegal to have sex in your bedroom and the choice of how you want to do that. But, anytime you put this stuff out in public, I just don't know if that's the best strategy. And or the other issue is, your ethical duties, as a lawyer. So, which I think Stephen A. Smith, highlighted.
So let's take a look at another high-profile perspective, and this one is from Charlemagne the God. So on the April 23rd episode of his podcast, his show, The Breakfast Club, he suggested that Sharpe's choices in the past appear to contribute to his current situation.
Destiny's not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. And all of this is happening because it seems like Shannon Sharpe made some poor choices. And being 54 at the time, hollering at a 19-year-old, is a very poor choice.
Very poor choice.
It is what it is. Yes, it's a shakedown, but people can't shake you down unless you give them something to shake.
Now, Charlemagne in that clip is referring to the age gap that's present between Sharpe, who's 56, and the plaintiff, who's now 20 years old. Okay, now Jeremy, is Charlemagne suggesting that Sharpe's choices contributed to this situation, specifically the large age gap? Does that have any legal relevance in this case? I mean, he says it's a shakedown, but can't be a shakedown unless you give them something to shake.
Right. I don't think so. I mean, this is sort of the age-old thing. I mean, there's sort of been many examples of sort of older men dating younger women, and there seems to be a mutual attraction there, consistent across relationships. But I will say this, and this is where I think the legal issue may go, is sometimes the power imbalances in relationships. And so that may become a concern as this case moves forward, is this sort of issue of him being older, more powerful, having more money. But I also think, to Charlemagne the God's point, it's also this issue of how much information Shannon Sharpe does put out in terms of about his relationships when he does interviews. Obviously the past audio tape that came out, these things are not going to help his case. And and I happen to like Shannon Sharpe. I think he's a great analyst, and I wish him all the best, and I hope that these allegations are not true.
I just wonder if it'll affect the jury, right? Just the perception of that. Could that turn them against him?
Agreed.
Okay, I want to take a look at something else. Now, this one is from the rapper Boosie Badass, and he took to X on April 22nd with a series of inflammatory tweets.
What Boosie guys say, bro?
He wrote, she heard he was about to get that $100 million. This is in reference to that rumored podcast deal that we mentioned earlier. I'm sick of these bleeps, maybe knowing they can probably get a couple million to make it go away. So, Jeremy, got a point here? I mean, could public suggestion that the accuser is targeting Shannon Sharpe for financial gain, could that be a key point here? I mean, the timing of this lawsuit is quite interesting.
So, great question. I think to your point earlier about juries may affect a jury in terms of how they view something or whatnot. But that being said, they're going to be instructed by the judge as to what facts they can look at. I think what really matters on the legal side is what do the facts say. And if there's enough facts there to show that the element of the claim has been proved, then ultimately that's sort of where it would land. So I think from a sort of media standpoint, it matters. Public sort of relations, it matters in terms of the timing of this. Clearly does not look good for the alleged victim. But that being said, I don't think it's going to matter much in terms of the legal aspect of it.
Well, let me ask you this. In terms of public sentiment, again, going back to Baldoni and Lively, a lot of people have opinions about that case. I'm curious what people's opinions will be of this. Let's say, for example, if you see a large segment of the population, large amount of celebrities just side with Shannon Sharpe on this, could that influence the decision to move forward with the lawsuit? I'm curious about what the public response and the response in the industry, how that might affect the progression of a lawsuit.
Absolutely. So, two points on that, or 1 point, but sort of two divisions. The first is, prior to going to trial, this could absolutely have an effect because the alleged victim could be.
The thing we hear over and over again is, why do I need a deodorant for private parties? I can just take a shower. So we put.
This could absolutely have an effect because the alleged victim could be looking at this with her counsel and saying, wow, the public opinion is against us. This is a lot of pressure to deal with. Let's settle this case and move on, which is probably what all parties will end up doing. I don't think they want this to go to trial or to have any more facts or anything else out there, right? This is definitely, crisis management from that standpoint. However, the split would be once it goes to trial, it's really just about the facts of the case. And the fact that Shannon Sharpe may or may not be looking at a $100 million podcast deal is not going to have an effect on whether or not the things that are being alleged were committed.
Well, in that same vein, we heard from psychologist and social commentator Dr. Umar Johnson came out in defense of Shannon Sharpe, voicing his support for the podcaster, the analyst, and this was during an Instagram live stream.
I'm standing with Uncle Shannon because I don't like when black men get taken down. Uncle Shannon Sharpe is my brother. I'm standing with Uncle Shannon Sharpe until the facts prove otherwise.
And he also said he believes this whole thing is a scam. Now, Jeremy, does Dr. Johnson publicly calling the case a scam raise any red flags for you?
No, I think this is something that you see with every ethnicity, with every color, with every person. This is something that you see when you deal with money. You're going to have people that are going to come forward and allege certain crimes or certain civil issues or whatever litigation. But that being said, it is something that we see more and more in this day and age with social media. So I think to me it really just comes down to the facts. And of course, if it goes to trial, it'll come down to that. But I think prior to that, to your point, and maybe to some of the points of a lot of the celebrities who've been weighing in, if this doesn't go to trial, it will come down to public opinion. And ultimately, I think the parties will make a decision based on public opinion.
And let's finish this up with the idea of public opinion, because we got a response from one more person I want to address. This one is from the rapper Cameron. And during the April 23rd episode of It Is What It Is, he also appeared to offer a conflicted take, saying on one hand that the accuser may have baited Shannon Sharpe into compromising situations to get some money from him because he's well known.
When you have this newfound success, you gotta know how to move, especially with the you gotta know how to move, my because they on. I'm not saying they don't with you on, but they want something.
But on the other hand, he also criticized Sharpe's attempt to settle the case.
Now, when you try to settle out on the low, it's a little bit of guilt there. Something happened. Not saying it wasn't consensual. Maybe you offered the money because you're like, look, I ain't got time. I just need this to be swept under the rug so I can get back to work and do what I got to do in between these deals. But I do know that it don't look good when you try to give somebody a couple dollars to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, Jeremy, that's an interesting point, right? So it is worth mentioning that Sharpe's attorney, Lonnie Davis, had previously reported and came out that his client offered this woman $10 million to settle privately, and it was the rejection of that offer that led to this filing. And I'm not surprised by that, because how quickly they had all of those text messages ready to publish made it seem they knew this was coming. Does he have a point, Cameron, that if you settle this, if you were about to settle this, it makes it look like you're guilty of something? Or maybe I should say liable for something?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think ultimately it's a crisis situation, right? The thing that you want is to put more information out in public and or to extend the matter longer than it has to be. I think this sort of highlights the power of non-disclosure agreements in relationships and why a lot of celebrities do them. It sort of highlights this point that ultimately these parties need to sort of put themselves in the best position possible. And I don't think anything to do with the negotiation would sort of harm that or harm anything towards trial, but I think it's just an issue of they don't want this to go on any longer, and they probably had, I imagine what happened, there was probably private conversations going on between Shannon Sharpe and this woman, and then they couldn't come to an agreement, or they brought the lawyers in, and then ultimately it was like, okay, we're going public with this. So it does not surprise me that ultimately, I mean, people all the time now will take screenshots of texts and keep records of things. We have the phones and all the technological capabilities to do that now. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that, other than to say the parties couldn't come to a deal and then they decided to go public.
I think a lot of people think about it. Radically different situation, but I think a lot of people look at what happened with Sean Combs, right? He didn't settle that case with Cassandra Ventura. She ends up filing the lawsuit. Then they settle. Everything blew up. Okay, very different situation. And by the way, Shannon Sharpe's not facing any criminal charges. Okay. Now there is one more update in this case I want to get into, and this is
a single thread of Ironside merino wool picking up a 15-pound kettlebell. Now, most merino wool is a single...
And this is Shannon Sharpe's team claims, of course, that all of this was consensual, that it was set up at the accuser's request. And we now have further claims being reported on this by TMZ, and this could maybe affect the case. So according to multiple sources who spoke to TMZ Sports on April 24th, Sharpe and the woman, who is apparently an OnlyFans model, engaged in what they described as a strictly physical, consensual BDSM relationship. Those sources, all unnamed by the way, so take it with a grain of salt, claim that the two met about 100 times for sexual encounters in Los Angeles and Nevada, all of which allegedly involve role-playing, choking, bondage, a lot allegedly at her request. And the sources even provided text messages that are a little too vulgar to be repeated here. But of course, Tony Busby, who's representing this Jane Doe, fired back at these claims, calling all of this, including Sharpe's defense, ridiculous. He said in a statement to TMZ Sports, "Someone should tell Mr. Sharpe that when you're digging yourself a hole, it would be smart to stop digging." The filed complaint and audio speaks for itself. And Busby also pointed to a text message from January 2025 that read, "I don't care what our history is, no means no, Shannon." And this is purportedly from the alleged victim in this case. Busby continued his statement saying, as you can clearly see in the text released by Mr. Sharpe's team, "No means no, no matter what happened before." And that's the central issue here, right, Jeremy? You listen to these sources, you hear what Shannon Sharpe has to say. It's complicated, right? Because they could have been in a completely consensual, kinky, role-playing BDSM relationship. But if at one point she says no and he continues, and there's at least one text message maybe suggesting that, does all this not matter?
Well, I mean, there's definitely some rules and policies and laws with regard to, bringing in sort of outside evidence or evidence going towards habit or consistent behavior. So in that sense, it does matter. But I think, Jesse, I would probably highlight the point that in terms of like a textbook response, right? I think the better pathway for Sharpe would have been remove himself from the situation, don't become the center of the highlight for actions beyond what you do on the show. And so I think he was right in that, but the sort of idea that you're releasing more information and you're putting text out there and you're trying to make the alleged victim look bad, I just don't think that helps with public opinion. I think the better pathway would have just been to say, I deny all allegations, and we would be going through the legal process. As hard as it is to do that, I think unfortunately we live in this social media world where there's sort of this need for more and more information and wanting to defend yourself. So I understand the plight of the situation and I get it, but it's also maybe not the best approach to defending yourself.
Does it give you a sense of who he may be calling as witnesses for his side? If you're hearing these unnamed, does it give you a sense of he might have witnesses who'll testify that this was a completely consensual relationship? And then it becomes a question about their credibility and their connections, but doesn't that, kind of give us a sense?
I think so. And I think, he is a celebrity, he is a well-known person. And I think also if you look at Shannon Sharpe's past podcast and shows, he's definitely been willing to talk about his sexual relationships. And so that's something that I'm sure that he has conversations with his friends. He's clearly doing it in public, so I agree. I think this is definitely where he's going to be getting his source of information in defense.
Jeremy Evans, thank you so much for taking the time and talking about the latest